Hello and welcome to the Chronicle Pregame Show alongside Sam Turken. I'm Jack Dolgin. We're here to break down Duke football, heading to Evanston to take, or as are we, I should say, heading to Evanston, as we'll cover the game later. Duke taking on Northwestern. Both teams not off to the starts they would have wanted. Northwestern 0-2 so far. Duke 1-1. Northwestern beat Duke 19-10 last year. This will be the second of 4 straight years. The two very strong academic schools as well take on each other. Sam, what can we look for in this one?
Well, these are two teams that have been struggling to start their season. Obviously, Duke lost to Wake Forest last week. Northwestern's lost to two subpar squads these first 2 weeks. First week was to Central Michigan, and then to Illinois State last week.
Which is an FCS team.
Yeah, as the game came down to the wire, and both teams are struggling in this kind of in the same ways. As far as offensively, struggling to generate points. Northwestern's only averaging 14 points per game. Duke only scored 14 points last week.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that.
Yeah, and I would say on the opposite side of things, the Northwestern, well, two things really. First, the running back is not to be underestimated. Northwestern's running back, Justin Jackson, was very strong last year against Duke, very strong throughout last season, and really has been doing well this season for Northwestern despite the lack of offensive production. And both teams' defenses have been really strong. Duke, relatively, they allowed 24 points against Wake Forest, but still certainly stronger than their offense, I would say. And Northwestern's defense, they're a defensive-oriented team, so you can talk about that.
Yeah, so we'll start with Duke's offense. Offensively against Wake Forest was loading the box with 7-8 defenders, daring Duke to pass. And, Duke played into their hands in the second half. They completely abandoned the run. They only ran it once.
Yeah.
So they just tried to spread out and take advantage of one-on-one coverage. And although it worked, Daniel Jones threw for 332 yards.
Yeah.
He still struggled in the pocket, and he was sacked 5 times. The offensive line struggled. Wake Forest recorded 10 tackles for loss.
Yeah.
And they also committed 3 turnovers, 2 fumbles, and an interception by Jones. And that put more pressure on the defense later in the game to come up with big stops.
Certainly.
And what we've heard is the defense fatigued down the stretch because they couldn't get off the field towards the end of the game, which allowed Wake Forest to really seize control of the game later on.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened with Duke and Northwestern last season. Northwestern's this big, powerful, physical team that really, as you said, as you talked about Justin Jackson, they really rely on Justin Jackson out of the backfield to wear opposing defenses down. And, they don't have much of a passing attack. Clayton Thorson's their starting quarterback.
Two underclassmen quarterbacks in this matchup.
Yeah. Clayton Thorson's only completed 50% of his passes this season, although he's averaging 194 yards per game, passing yards per game. So they're pretty one-dimensional offense.
Yeah.
And if you can key on their running attack, you may have a good day against them.
So really, in that sense, an opposite problem offensively for the two teams. Duke was a lot weaker on the ground last game, and Northwestern really relied more on the ground last game.
Well, actually, in a way, it's similar for the defenses because they can both key in on rushing attacks. If Northwestern, loads guys in the box to try to shut down Duke's running attack, and Duke can't really get their passing game going like they did against Wake Forest, that may be a good day for them. And same thing for Duke. Duke's going to have to force Northwestern to throw the ball downfield.
Yeah.
And beat them along the edges.
Yeah, well, that about does it for Sam and I. We will see you after the game from Evanston, where we guess it will be a tight one, with both teams really trying to fight for their seasons really at stake. I think whatever team doesn't win this game is really going to have a lot to...
Duke will be 1-3. Northwestern will be 0-3. Duke has Notre Dame coming up next weekend.
Yeah.
Duke would be 1-2 if they lose this game, and then with Notre Dame coming up.
So a must-win game for both teams, I think it's fair to say. Again, alongside Sam Turken, I'm Jack Dolgin. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you after the game.